We're just going to go ahead and get started. If you have any questions throughout this event, just please put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable with. So my name is Jill Jensen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an intern at the Women's Center here at UW-Oshkosh. And I'm also just going to be the host for this event. I am here with Allison Bolin, a victim survivor advocate at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center. So welcome, Allison. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. So the Ask the Advocate series is a part of the Sexual Assault Awareness Month programming. And here, folks can learn about the role of a victim survivor advocate from different agencies around the region. So we have Allison here from the Sexual Assault Crisis Center, which is in the Fox Cities. These conversations are intended to raise awareness about victim survivor advocate services and to foster discussion about how to best support victim survivors of sexual violence, assault, and abuse. So Allison, if you would just kind of start off, if you could introduce yourself, share your pronouns, any educational background, and how long you have been at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center.
All right, thank you so much, Jill. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Bolin. I am a campus advocate with the Sexual Assault Crisis Center in the Fox Cities. Our main office is located in Appleton, so not too far from UW-Oshkosh. I am actually an alum of UWO, so I'm really familiar with your campus, and I'm extra excited to connect with you all today. And I have actually only been in my role as a campus advocate since August, so it hasn't even been a full year. It's been an interesting year, but it's been really great. I've been enjoying my time here. And my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Thank you. So we can just kind of jump into the first question. So what does a victim survivor advocate do? Can you kind of explain some of your job duties?
Absolutely. As a campus advocate, I am here to provide support and resources for any of the students or staff, primarily at Lawrence University and Fox Valley Tech. When you experience violence, that really impacts your ability to cope with school and day-to-day activities. So I'm really here as someone who can be a bridge, a support, and someone who can offer information about resources that are on campus and also off campus. So some of the ways that I can provide information for off-campus resources is information on SAAM exams, which is going to the emergency room to, get your body checked out to make sure that you are safe, to talk about evidence collection if that's something that a survivor is interested in, talking about different options in the community as far as reporting to the police, accompanying a survivor to either a SAAM exam or law enforcement to make that report. And then also counseling, different resources that we have here at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center, and then also in the community, and some on-campus information about accommodations for academics in the residence halls, if there needs to be any safety planning, talking about the different misconduct policies, and then also counseling services. So really just being there as a support and someone who can help provide information.
Thank you. And I actually kind of have a question going off of just your job duties. What are some of the ethical duties that you kind of have to stick to, such as, reporting, confidentiality? If you can just kind of discuss those.
Yeah, that's a really great question and point to bring up. So all of the advocacy services that I provide as an advocate or any advocate at our center are 100% confidential. We are not required to report any of the information that's provided to us by either students or staff. So that does bring some comfort to any students or staff members who just want to have a conversation and a discussion and open up to someone about the sexual violence that they have experienced and talk about how they can go on to heal themselves. And again, it's 100% confidential, and we are not mandated to report to anyone.
And then does your role intersect with the legal system in any way?
Sure. So we definitely do intersect a little bit with the legal system. All survivors are legally allowed an advocate by their side if they wish to report with law enforcement. So going with a survivor to the police department if they would like to make a report, or if they've already given a report, continuing to advocate and support them throughout the legal process. If the report does end up getting charged and going to court, we can certainly answer any questions and help a survivor out, because it can be very overwhelming and confusing. So again, we're just there as an advocate to follow the survivor's lead and support them through that process.
And then did anybody who's watching have any questions for Allison regarding any of her job duties or anything else you would like to know? And if anybody doesn't have questions, I can move on to the next question. So what are some of the joys that you have experienced so far? I know that, this position is pretty new, but, can you kind of talk about some of the good things part of the job?
Of course. Building connections with survivors is certainly something that, brings me joy. Helping to see a survivor on their path to healing is really, truly great to see. And this past year, of course, we've all been through COVID, so it's been interesting. And maybe we don't always have our normal supports or friends and resources alongside of us, but being able to provide that 24/7 crisis and advocacy support to someone who's experienced such trauma really does make me feel good. And, I'm happy to be there for someone who may not necessarily have their normal person that they count on, or, they maybe don't have anyone to talk to. So just being able to provide that support is really huge.
And we do actually have a question in the chat.
Okay.
So what kind of degree do you have to hold for this job?
I believe an advocate could have a number of different degrees. I have a Bachelor of Science Human Services degree from UW Oshkosh, but maybe social work or some sort of community engagement. I'm not necessarily sure that there has to be a specific degree related to being an advocate, but some passion, willingness to get involved in the community and to learn and to be there for others is really something that would be important for this role. Great question.
And then another question, have you ever dealt with burnout? If so, how do you cope with it?
Yeah, that's definitely something that is very unfortunately normal in a position where you're working with others and helping them through traumatic experiences. So unfortunately, burnout can be really common, but debriefing with my supervisor or with other advocates on the team after experiencing, a rough day or a long day really does make a difference. And then, taking care of yourself, making sure that you're getting some rest. I like to keep active, so I have a dog. Her name is Maddie. She's a golden retriever, and we love to get outside and go for walks. That really does help me to kind of process through and burn some stress after I've had a long week or a long day. But taking care of yourself is so important. And scheduling, as much as you can, some time for rest or just downtime in the day is really important.
Yeah, self-care is definitely important. Have you ever experienced vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. And again, just, taking those steps towards self-care, and that does look different for everyone. So not everyone's going to want to get outside and take a walk or take a bath, but really finding what works for you is really important. And even having someone to talk to, advocates, could use a counselor or a therapist if they're feeling some of that vicarious trauma because of their workplace. So seeking out those resources are really important.
And then can you kind of talk about, some of the challenges that you've experienced thus far?
I think something that's really challenging for me is when I encounter survivors who maybe don't have friends and family who are supportive of them or understanding of the experience that they've gone through. That's where advocates really do, kind of step in and help to provide that support and connect them with other resources and community supports. But that's challenging to see when someone's biggest, cheerleaders at home maybe don't believe them or support them. That's really challenging. And then, we're all virtual right now. Not all survivors may feel comfortable sharing their story over the phone or through video chat. So just making sure that we're meeting the survivor where they're at and taking their lead to connect in a way that feels comfortable for them. So just the normal COVID challenges have been some that we've experienced in advocacy too. And this is all I've known so far since I've started in August. So, we're really doing our best to meet the survivors where they're at and do what is comfortable for them, but certainly can be challenging at times.
I'm just curious, have you had to mobile out to hospitals, or do the victim survivors come to the crisis center? Where's kind of that initial point of contact?
We see all of that. So some of our initial contact could come through a referral through, one of the universities or the technical college or just from the community. So they may call in if they've experienced trauma, and we can meet them virtually over the phone or through a confidential platform. We are meeting survivors at our office now, keeping with COVID safety protocols, but also we get a lot of that first connection at the emergency department for a SANE exam. So meeting the survivor there for the first time, or getting a call from law enforcement that they do have a survivor there who's looking to report, and meeting them at the different police department for the first time to connect with them. So we are still active in the community, meeting the needs of the survivors that are here, despite COVID. So we're still out there.
And how can individuals not in a formal advocate role, how can they support victim survivors of sexual assault?
That's a really great question. That's hard for a lot of people. You may struggle to think of how you can support someone who has experienced sexual trauma or a sexual assault. And one of the biggest things to remember is just to believe the survivor. Let them know that they're really brave for coming forward with their story, and supporting them as best as you can in the way that they need. So if they need some time, allow them that. If they want to discuss the trauma and what action steps need to be taken right away, hopefully you can connect them to some resources or do some research together on what resources are out there. And another one that I like to recommend is to check in every once in a while. Your friend or your family member might disclose this, active sexual violence to you, and you might have a really great conversation with them and feel like you supported them really well in the moment. But it's really important to continue that support. It doesn't have to be every day or anything like that, but making sure to check in on them, making sure that they're doing okay. And just following up to see if they have gotten, to connect with any of those community resources that might be really important for them in their healing.
Thank you. That's very insightful advice. I was also kind of wondering, um, as an advocate, if you have somebody that might ask for your recommendation, they come to you and they're asking you, what do you think I should do? How do you go about a situation like that?
As an advocate, I'm really trying to empower the survivor to take that next step based on what feels right and what they decide. So certainly laying it all out there, having a meeting or, a time to connect to discuss whatever they're looking to talk about, maybe talking about some pros and cons, talking about the ins and outs of different steps that they can take after an assault, but ultimately allowing the survivor to make the decision on what they would like to do next, and giving them the time and space to do so. We meet with survivors and you talk about those things, but they don't have to decide in that exact moment if they want to report to law enforcement. They can wait a few days or weeks or even longer than that. They're healing and taking their time to make those decisions is really, really important.
And then are there any common mistakes, like first-time advocates might make that should definitely be avoided?
I think maybe, giving like you should do this or I would do this, giving that advice is maybe not the best. And you can maybe see how that would be given because you want to help a survivor, in whatever way you can. But it's important for this decision to be, driven by the survivor. So I could see how that might be a mistake, but I know that advocates have their hearts in the right place. Again, the services are confidential. We want to be there to provide that support and community connection in a really unbiased, low pressure way.
And then we do just have a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
So what similarities or differences have you observed supporting students or in prevention work at FVTC compared to Lawrence, which is, 2-year technical campus versus a residential 4-year campus? So any similarities or differences?
Yeah, so Lawrence is a campus that has students who live on campus and who often interact with one another, in the cafeteria or at campus events, or they're staying in the dormitories together, the residence halls together. So they have, maybe than students at Lawrence would have. Students at Lawrence, they're not all living in a dorm together or anything like that. But I would say the students at Lawrence and the students at the Tech are all experiencing, unfortunately, really similar types of sexual trauma or intimate partner violence on both campuses. So they certainly have their differences, but unfortunately, a lot of the same happening.
And then another question in the chat, how long does someone have to report? Is there a statute of limitations?
I'm sorry, just one moment, please. I'm gonna have to step away for just 1 second.
Okay, that's okay.
What other questions do folks have? Also, I will look up the statute of limitations for Wisconsin specifically. So different states might have different statutes. So it's important, like if you're going to be moving out of state or if you move to a new state, and if you're working in this field, to be aware of the state specific statutes.
I am so sorry. Someone just randomly came to my door. I guess that is what happens when we're working from home. So
No,
just
it
threw
is.
me off guard a little bit. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know if I missed anything, but in Wisconsin, the statute of limitations for like a sexual assault is generally 10 years. So when you collect evidence at a SANE exam, you have about 9.5 years before you would maybe have to report that for that evidence to still be saved at the crime lab in Wisconsin.
And then as an advocate, are you required to be on call during your job?
So we do take on-call shifts every once in a while. We have some really awesome volunteers as part of our nonprofit community. So a lot of the shifts, either on the weekends or in the evenings, are covered by volunteers. But every once in a while, our staff do jump in on those openings to ensure is.
And then did anybody have any questions? We have a couple people typing.
Awesome.
Okay, so the first question is not necessarily related to being an advocate, but what advice would you give to students about to graduate and enter the workforce during an ongoing pandemic?
I would say, hard as it might be, don't give up. The right opportunity is going to come along. Keep putting yourself out there. Applying for jobs is hard, no matter what is happening in, the world. But during the pandemic, I can only imagine it can feel a little scary to know or to not know what's coming down the road, or graduating in May. So I would just say be persistent, get involved, volunteer at different places. You might stumble across someone who can help to connect you to a really great job opportunity.
That is good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So another question is, what kind of accommodations are there for staff and faculty who work with the advocate and have trauma experiences?
I think that one would probably really depend on the circumstances. To be honest, I haven't helped facilitate a staff member with any accommodations in the workplace, unfortunately, at this point. So I don't have any experience with that one. And I'm not sure, I can't see the chat or if it's just coming to you, Jill, but I'm certainly happy to look into that one a little bit more, and I can maybe send it to the group or send it to you, Jill, and you can share that with the Joy. I'm not sure if what in general can be done. It may be specific to the incident or the different workplace that the staff member is at.
Yeah, and I can definitely, you can reach out to me and I can
Okay.
note of who's in the group and then send it out.
Okay. That sounds good. I will plan to do that.
Yeah. And then another question is, do you collaborate with sexual assault nurse examiners? So during a SANE exam?
Yeah, absolutely. We are certainly collaborating with the nurses during the SANE exam. We, are really there for the survivor, which is a really unique relationship. The nurse has, certain things that she needs to check off to ensure that the survivor is safe, physically, and they're okay to be evidence if they need to. But as an advocate, we're really just there for the survivor and to be there for them. So if they need a glass of water or a break or have a question about something that's happening during the SANE exam, we can kind of step in and help to connect with that SANE nurse to make sure that it happens and the survivor is comfortable. We work really hard to establish a strong relationship with, the nurses so that, they're comfortable when we're in the room and, we can make the experience, hopefully as smooth as possible.
And then another question in the chat.
Awesome.
What kind of experiences / educational opportunities would you recommend for students considering this field?
So you can volunteer as an advocate. I think that would be a really great place to start if you were maybe interested in getting involved with a sexual assault service provider. So we do require some training, all that we provide, and a lot of resources for all of our volunteers. But I would say, going right to the source is a really great, opportunity and a really great place to start as far as volunteering in the community. And I can probably assure that we are always, looking for volunteers, and the different, agencies in the community also offer, coverage 24/7. So there's, different options as far as what agency to volunteer at. I would, reach out even if there's nothing posted on their website. Maybe connect with someone in their office to see what type of volunteer opportunities are available and go from there. But volunteering is awesome. So I would say that's a really great place to get that experience, build connections with the staff who are there, and, who knows where it could lead.
And do crisis centers also have internship opportunities for students?
We do. Yep. So at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center, we have counselors on staff. So we offer counseling internships. And then I believe we also do offer like an advocacy internship as well. So certainly opportunities.
And then another question in the chat. I'm not sure if I missed this, but how do you practice self-care? I feel that a lot of this work around advocacy can at times be very heavy emotionally. So I am just curious as to ways you try to take care of yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I like to practice self-care by taking my thoughts. It's getting nice out. It really helps me to clear my mind and just relax. And, really stressful days, or on days that weren't so stressful, I always like to get outside and try to be active. And that's usually by walking. I also like to bake. So, putting a podcast, on and making some cookies is great. And then connecting with people who are on your team. I always debrief with, the therapist or the other advocates that are here. So that we can talk about the experience that I had, and, debrief that way. But self-care is so important, and it looks a little different for everyone. It looks different for me in December than it does, now that we're in April. So just staying in tune with yourself.
And then another question, is it hard to use specific language regarding specific acts or body parts and etc.? I know that it's important to use the correct wording, especially if it goes to trial.
Yeah, it's definitely important to use the specific wording. The unique relationship between an advocate and a survivor is that everything that the survivor talks to me about is confidential. So I will never have to go on the stand and say, look at my notes, or have notes about, what we talked about and how it may differ from her notes that she has. But it's certainly important to use the correct terminology. Assaults are difficult to talk about. So we certainly try not to re-traumatize or, re-victimize the survivor by having them share their story multiple times. So definitely, taking the survivor's lead and, hopefully, allowing that the story, once, so they don't have to continue to use those words or share, the details of the assault.
And then another question, I know some sexual assault service providers also facilitate court-mandated perpetrator rehabilitation or treatment. Does Sexual Assault Crisis Center work with only survivor victims, or do they also work with perpetrators?
We only work with survivor victims here at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center. So of all ages, youth and adult, but only survivors of sexual assault, not perpetrators here at our center.
And I just have a question. So how do you go about working with minors who come to you, specifically minors who may not have parents who are supportive?
We are constantly having this conversation. It's definitely not a black and white answer that can be given. Every agency is going to have their own policy as far as mandated reporting and what that looks like when working with youth clients. So always just following the policy that your agency has in place is really important. But we do want to provide that advocacy and support to all survivors, even if their parents aren't involved. So if our center's policy didn't allow for something, but the survivor was looking for it, maybe, trying to refer them to different community agencies that could provide them with that support. But that's certainly something that we're always having conversations about, because that does happen where we have maybe a teen survivor who is looking for something specific or certain support, and we want to make sure that they're able to get that, no matter where that might be.
Then another question, do you offer group therapy?
We do not offer group therapy, but we do hold support groups. So throughout the year, we have different groups that are run for adult survivors, female survivors, and a number of different things. So while we don't have group therapy, there's certainly ways to get that support and connection at our agency in a group setting.
I have a question as well. Do you deal with, or have you had troubles dealing with stigma around sexual assault, particularly with identified men who want resources? Yeah,
there is, as people may or may not know, there's a lot of stigma associated with sexual assault. And part of April Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we're looking to get out there and to have conversations and provide education to the community to help end some of that stigma that surrounds sexual assault. So there is certainly stigma around men who are maybe looking for services or who have experienced sexual assault. But we definitely provide services, help to have conversations with those who may not understand or have questions about male sexual assault or, any questions about the stigma. So we're certainly having those conversations, but it is certainly something that we encounter. Unfortunately, it's ingrained into our society. So we're always working to change that.
And then another question in the chat, do you have to be a licensed counselor to run a support group?
At our agency, we have a co-advocate of mine is the staff member who runs the support group, and she is not a licensed therapist. So at some agencies, therapists may run the support group, but our support groups at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center, as of right now, are offered by an advocate.
Those were really good questions.
Yeah.
Everyone for putting those in the chat. I see Alicia typing.
Such great questions, such good conversation.
So or what does your schedule look like? Do you do advocacy as, full-time, or is it more of a part-time thing?
That's a really good question. So I'm sure it's different at every center and, the number of advocates that they have on staff, but I am a full-time advocate. So our center hours are Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday from 9 to 5 and Friday from 9 until 2. So certainly accommodate for survivors who may need to meet maybe in the evenings or have something early in the morning that works for them. We are really flexible. We're always changing things around. But that's primarily what our schedule looks like here. And then 24/7 crisis coverage. Again, if you call our number, there is always going to be someone who answers.
And what are some other resources in the area? I don't know if you're familiar with Oshkosh or just kind of more of the Fox Cities area, but other resources for victim survivors if they do want to reach out?
Absolutely. There are a lot of resources, and by no means am I going to remember all of them. I know that UWO has some really great advocates or service providers who are coming on to these advocate meetings throughout the month of April. So Reach Counseling is really great. Their Winnebago County ASTOP, Harbor House Domestic Abuse Services is in Appleton. Christine Ann is in Oshkosh. Diverse and Resilient has an office here in Appleton, and they provide services to members of the LGBTQ community. So I think those are all really great agencies that are providing supports to survivors, and probably just a very small list of them. Gosh, there's a lot of great nonprofits who are providing services to the community.
And then another question in the chat. I know it differs wherever you go, but what kind of pay level does something like this pay? I know it's hard to say because I'm sure it varies widely, but I think it's important to know what you're looking at getting into a career such as the one you're in.
Yeah, that's kind of a hard question to answer, but I certainly try to be competitive and pay their employees appropriately, a wage that can support them. We're providing really great services, and oftentimes nonprofits have, great vacation or, like, I can't think of the word right now, but there's a lot of extras that might come with working at a nonprofit, because they certainly want to, be great to their staff. So I would say it's certainly competitive. It's definitely going to differ depending upon what area in the state or country that you're in, but certainly worth having a conversation about with maybe one of the executive directors if that's something that you're interested in.
And then an individual in the chat mentioned benefits. So I'm guessing
benefits. Yes, thank you. It was on the tip of my tongue.
And then another question, many of us might be most familiar with Oshkosh. What challenges do you see facing victim survivors that might be specific to the Appleton area? Or what challenges in general have you observed victim survivors facing?
Okay, yeah, certainly, the stigma, finding the support, rape culture is everywhere around you. So no matter where you are, you're going to be encountering that. But I think just community problems like homelessness and drug use is certainly something that is happening, here in the Fox Valley. People might question that or might not necessarily believe that that is happening because it's not something that's right in your face like maybe in a bigger city, but it's certainly out there. So if a survivor is struggling in different aspects of their lives, we want to be there to support them and connect them to different agencies that can really help to address those other areas in their life that they might need a little TLC with.
And then Alicia just kind of talked a little bit more about how the pay varies between positions, with benefits, and then the flexibility of schedules, things like that.
For sure. Yep.
And another question, I hope you don't mind me chiming in on this one, but myself, I never knew you guys were even there, and I live super close. I knew of the Christine Ann Center and REACH, etc., but hadn't heard of you. So that can be a huge barrier to someone seeking help in the Appleton area.
Absolutely. The visibility, getting out there, letting the community know that we are here and there's services for them is certainly something that, you know, everyone or that we're encountering, and we can see that, you know, just by that statement. So spread the word if you have friends or family who are experiencing something, that there is, you know, support for them here in the Fox Valley.
And I'm also just kind of curious, have you noticed any particular groups that have been, you've seen like higher rates of abuse or violence to, anything like that from your experience?
You know, from my experience, I've interacted with the survivors, primarily female, but I have had male survivors from campus at Fox Valley Tech and at Lawrence come forward. Unfortunately, because of the stigma, like we talked about a little bit earlier, sometimes male survivors don't always feel like they should or, you know, can come forward to receive services. So I would say that we've certainly provided services at both campuses for all genders, races, and ethnicities.
And then did anybody else have any other questions or any comments? Alicia just also posted the Facebook page.
Awesome.
Assault Crisis.
Thank you. Awesome.
And then another question, how do you think UWO could play a role in helping amplify the work of the Sexual Assault Crisis Center?
I think by collaborating and connecting to have conversations and discussions and put on events just like this is certainly a step in the right direction. You know, I've had nothing but great experiences connecting with everyone at UW Oshkosh, and being a part of the CCRT has really helped to build some of those connections. So just getting to know the staff, you know, at both agencies, connecting to have conversations, to check in and then collaborate on activities like this is certainly all going to be really helpful. Because Oshkosh and Appleton so close.
Yes, and just, I mean, the fact that, again, like you mentioned, we are having these conversations and just really talking about it, it's really the only thing that can really further this discussion on such an important topic.
Absolutely.
And then any other last questions or anything? Does the Sexual Assault Crisis Center have any events coming up or any fundraisers?
So for the month of April, we're collaborating with a number of different organizations in the Fox Valley to raise awareness and talk about Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I would say that's what's happening for us right now. I can certainly put a little flyer into the chat that does list all of those off. If you're in Appleton by chance at all and you go downtown on College Avenue, you can see a display that we have set up with a bunch of umbrellas and some signage related to Sexual Assault Awareness Month, where we're really looking to start those conversations. So certainly check that out. And I will definitely put that little flyer here in the chat if I can find it. For some reason, I'm not able to go into the chat. So I will make sure that I will get this to Jill or Alicia, and you can certainly send that out to everyone. Or check out our Facebook page. Alicia put it in there. We have everything listed there. That's probably the easiest way to find out what we have going on.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody have any other last questions? I can also, Allison, I know we talked earlier about the faculty and staff accommodations.
Yes.
So if you do find anything about that, definitely send that over my way, and then I can send that out.
Awesome. I will definitely do that.
And then also, if you all could just fill out the evaluation, it just helps us, you know, to see what kind of programming we want for next year for Sexual Assault Month. So that's in the chat. Okay, well, Allison, thank you so much. Oh, and then we do have one more question.
Sure.
Oh, so it sounds like Ahava, the salon, is offering the teal hair extensions this year again, which is super awesome.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, thank you to whoever sent that out.